So I'm really lucky that this career of mine as a business school professor is my second career, not my first. And because of that, what I teach, I've actually done. So I left my MBA program a long time ago, joined the retailing industry in the US. I'm an American. I worked for a supermarket business in Chicago, then a very small company called Gap, which I helped to make a whole lot bigger. After that, I did two startups. One of them succeeded, one failed. So I think you could say I have a win, a loss, and maybe a draw to my name. 20 years in retailing was enough, I thought, so I decided I wanted to do something else in the second half of my career. And I decided eventually that should be being a business school professor. I went back to school, earned a PhD, taught in London, or taught in Denver for 7 years. Had a wonderful sabbatical experience at London Business School in 2000 that was going to be 10 weeks, and it's turned into 18 years. So here I am, still a business school professor, but I can blend what I've studied as an academic with what I learned as a practitioner, and that helps me and my students get practical knowledge they can actually apply. This is the third time I've come back to teach at VU. And I come back to teach for a number of reasons. One of those is that Vienna is a magical city, especially around the holidays, which is when I come back. But the more important reason is that I find the VU students younger than my LBS students, who tend to be executives and executive MBAs, but they're very eager to learn, they're smart, they're well prepared, and they're very eager to participate in the case study kind of classroom that I run. So we have these fantastic discussions where people put their hands up and they disagree, and out of all of that debate comes some real learning. People ask about the course I teach, and one of the things that I think is different about my entrepreneurial finance course from many others around the world is that I believe it's important that the people who take the course understand how the person on the other side of the deal table is going to think. So I want entrepreneurs to understand better how the financiers think about doing deals, what's important to them, and so on. But I also want the financiers to better understand how entrepreneurs think so that they can better reach a meeting of the minds that they're likely to both get on the same page. And I think this course, whether it's taught here or at London Business School, is probably the only course like it in the world that brings both of these perspectives together. Most entrepreneurial finance courses are taught by an investor or somebody who comes from a finance background, and they bring only one perspective. This course brings two. One of the cool things about SIMC students here is they're very interested in innovation. So today I asked my students, how many of you are likely to start an entrepreneurial venture at some point in your career? Guess what? Almost every hand in the room went up. So these are people who are going to make a real difference. The people who create all the jobs in the world and who make economies grow are not the big multinational companies, because they're trying to replace people with capital all the time. The people who are going to make these economies grow, and what part of the world doesn't need jobs today, those people are entrepreneurs. And I have the next generation of entrepreneurs with me in a SIMC classroom every time I come. It's fantastic. There are a number of things I like a lot about the SIMC students. Number one, they're extremely well prepared. I ask them to read quite a lot. I ask them to prepare cases and be ready to run the numbers on those cases and then discuss why their point of view about what the protagonist in the case should do is different than somebody else's point of view. And they're very well prepared and do that well. Number two, they're delightful, happy, smiling people with almost an equal gender balance in the classroom most of the time, which is really refreshing to see today. I'm a father of two daughters, so that matters to me. And I think they're also the kind of people who are developing what I call street smarts. They don't want to just be book smart. They really want to know how the world works, how people think about making decisions, and how you can bring evidence to the decisions you make as a business person, so those decisions are likely to be adopted. And there's something about the SIMC curriculum, I don't know exactly what it is, but it seems to be developing that set of skills in this kind of student. And maybe that's why SIMC students get the great jobs that they do, because those skills get developed. People sometimes ask me why I teach with cases, which is what I do. And I think I do that today because when I was a business school student a long time ago at Stanford, the courses I remember the most and the lessons that stuck with me the most are the lessons that came out of discussing cases. So I had already experienced it as a student, so I was prone to do it when I first taught back quite some time ago in Denver. But secondly, one of the really powerful things about teaching with cases is that it gives my students a chance to learn about different industries. So every case is set in a different industry. We did an online travel agent company today. This morning, we did a case on an engineering outsourcing business that has grown very fast and become the global leader in engineering outsourcing, started by two Indian guys, one of whom arrived in the US with $60 in his pocket. He's gone on to build this fantastic company. The day before that, we did cases in other industries. So you build up this knowledge of what it's like to be in all these different industries by using case method teaching. And you also read theory, if you will. Though I don't use that word with my students, I prefer to call it tools and frameworks. And we read something, maybe an article in an HBR, or it's a book chapter in a book I wrote or somebody else wrote. And then we take the lessons, the theory, if you will, from that chapter, and we then apply it to the case so the students get a chance to actually use the theory, not just listen to the theory being taught. That's what's really cool, in my judgment, about case method teaching. My first book is called The New Business Road Test, and in my first book, there's a chapter 7 that talks about what you need in terms of an entrepreneurial team to be successful in pursuing an attractive opportunity. And one of the things that's critical for a team is for it to be able to execute on what I call the critical success factors that are relevant in the industry where that venture sits. Those are the things that if you get them right, you're probably going to be successful, even though you make other mistakes, which you will. But if you get those critical things wrong, it's going to be a really hard road. Well, I think what entrepreneurs should do is think about what are the critical success factors in the industry where I'm going to play. And if you don't know what they are, talk to some other people in that industry or investors who have invested in that industry and find out what do you have to really get right in this industry. And then you build a team around that set of critical issues. That's a diverse team where one person brings this, another person brings that, and together you bring all the skills that you need. There isn't a universal skill set that every entrepreneur needs. Instead, the skills, I think, are largely industry specific. And for that reason, in my view, entrepreneurship played to win is almost always a team sport. It's not the solo sport that all the press would imagine. Richard Branson and Michael Dell and Steve Jobs, most of them had fantastic teams behind them that bring capabilities to the table that they themselves didn't have. For my students who want to become entrepreneurs, I tell them that the best way to become an entrepreneur is find a compelling problem that some set of customers have for which your skills are well suited. So you shouldn't just, I remember a movie when I was young, it was called The Graduate, and Dustin Hoffman, the star of the movie, was advised as he was getting out of university to go into plastics, because plastics was hot. Well, today, young students might be advised, go into software, or internet, or blockchain, or something like that. I don't think you ought to think that way. I think what you ought to do is find a compelling problem that some set of customers have that you and your colleagues' skills could solve particularly well, and then go do that. And so often that process begins not by saying, can I come up with an idea, but rather it's, who do I know that I can put together my skills with? What do I know? What's my educational training, right? What have I learned in my 20 or 25 years so far? And who am I? What kind of work do I like to do? What are my skills? What's my educational background? And you can sort of pick and choose dimensions out of all of that, perhaps with another couple of people. And then you put those together in interesting combinations and say, well, that set of skills and networks and so on, it could lead to this, or it could lead to that. And what you want to do is match that to some problem that some set of customers have, or something that's maybe not delightful currently, like Starbucks figured out 35 years ago how to get us to pay $4 for a cup of coffee instead of 50 cents by making it a delightful experience. Did we have a problem with our coffee shop experience back then? I don't think so. But Starbucks saw a way to make it really quite special. So I think those are the two drivers of most successful entrepreneurial ventures, either consumer delight or solving a compelling problem. I think that's the place to start. I love a couple of things about Austria and a couple of things about Vienna. I love the people in Austria. They're just warm, open, friendly, delightful to be around. I love the culture of Vienna, the ballet, the symphony, the musical heritage here, the food. It's a really special place to visit, even when it's cold in the winter, which is when I come. So those are really special things to me.